So today we're going to be talking about microbiology. We're going to be talking about the microbiology that you need to know for the TEAS exam. And as always, I'm going to be really curious to see the questions that you have to ask, and anything that I can do to answer questions that you have. Just let me know. I'll be like, as I go, I'll be trying to keep an eye on the chat. Sometimes I'll be like talking and going back and forth. I won't address your question right away, but like I will try to get to it absolutely as soon as possible. So just hang in there if I haven't like quite addressed what you're going to say. Microbiology is one of the T7 life science main topics. Okay. These are sort of the 8 topics that I break the life science down into. And microbiology is the one that we're going to be talking about today. Okay. Now, what do you need to know about microbiology for the T's? Microbiology at a very high level, right, is the study of organisms that are too small to see with the naked eye. Okay. And we call these microbes or microorganisms. Okay. They're too small to see with the naked eye. And because of that, we have to use microscopes or other tools to see them. All right. That is microbiology at a very high level. Now, the microbiology that you need for the T's is usually somewhat different from the microbiology that you have taken in school. Okay? In school, a lot of people have to take a microbiology class, and it focuses on all sorts of things. You talk about DNA, you talk about genetic engineering, you talk about all sorts of different ways that microbes can use energy or create energy from the environment, things like that. For the T's, a lot of what you learned in a microbiology class is not really relevant. And instead, stuff that you might not have learned in a microbiology class is relevant. So sometimes people are like, oh, I'll ace the microbiology section because I took micro. And then you look at the questions that the TEAS asks, and you're like, actually, this is not what I learned in my micro class. Okay. So that's kind of how it often works. Um, this is right here uh, a very high level outline of the things that you need to know for microbiology on the T's and the things that we're going to be talking about today in this live stream. Okay, so one, little bit of microbiology history. Then you need to know about some types of some types of microbes or microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses. You need to know the similarities and differences. We need to know about eukaryotes and prokaryotes. We need to know how viruses function. We need to know about different types of microscopes. What type of microscope we'd use to look at what thing. We need to know some terminology about disease, and we need to know about the many diseases that microbes cause. Okay. And many diseases that microbes do not cause. Okay. Now, I like to do a couple examples of practice problems so you can help to see if you need to learn this stuff. I don't want you to waste your time if you already know this. So here we go. Here's the first practice problem here. Okay. Choose the statement that correctly compares bacteria and viruses. Okay. We're looking for the correct statement here. Okay. Bacteria and viruses both have ribosomes. Bacteria always have a DNA genome. Viruses always have an RNA genome. Viruses and bacteria tend to have similar size, or bacteria typically have a cell wall. Viruses have a protein capsid. All right. And what is the correct answer here? What is the correct answer here? The correct answer is going to be D for this question. If you didn't know this, you will by the end of the live stream, so don't worry about it. And here's the next question. Choose the correct pairings of disease and causative agents. So this is something that is all over the T's. They're going to ask you questions where you get different diseases and you have to know what causes them. Maybe it's a microbe, maybe it's a type of microbe, maybe it's not a microbe. Okay, so we're going to select all that apply. First, Down syndrome caused by a virus? Nope. Cross it off. Cystic fibrosis caused by genetic mutation. Indeed, that's correct. Anthrax. Is that caused by a fungus? No, it is not. Cholera. Is that caused by a virus? Nope, it is not. And finally, malaria. Is that caused by a protozoan? Yes, it is caused by a protozoan. So there you go. So we're going to learn how to do questions like this. If you don't know the stuff right now, you will very soon. Okay. So let's get started. Keep any questions coming as you go. Now, microbiology, as we've said, the study of organisms that are too small to see with the naked eye. Now, if you have, taken biology, even probably in middle school, you probably used a microscope, right? And microscopes are pretty wild because they let you see this whole tiny microscopic world that is all around us that we don't usually get to see because everything's too small. And when you use a microscope, you see some of the most amazing things, right? You can take a drop of water, like you see on the slide here, right? You can take a drop of water, look at it under the microscope, drop of pond water, and you look at it on the microscope, and you see all of these crazy tiny creatures that are swimming around and they're floating around, and it's this whole tiny microscopic world in one drop of water, right? And so there are microbes, microorganisms, living things too small to see pretty much absolutely everywhere, right? And microscopes are amazing because they let us do this. You Even if you haven't had the chance to use a microscope, I'm sure in textbooks or even just on TV, you have seen pictures that have been taken with a microscope. And maybe this is stuff like blood cells, pictures of bacteria, pictures of plant cells, of things like onion roots, where cells look kind of like bricks all stacked together. It's really amazing to look at look at how the world appears when you magnify it with a microscope. Now, um, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Um, now, now, all of this stuff with microbes, microscopes, kind of the microscopic world, we very much take it for granted today, right? Because, like just as I said, most or many middle schoolers have used a microscope, but it wasn't always like that, right? It wasn't until the late 1600s that people started to explore the microscopic world, right? And you might think, well, yeah, that's a long time ago. Yeah, true. But even in the late 1600s, people knew a lot of stuff. They knew about a lot of stuff, right? But they didn't know about anything that was like too small to see, right? They had no idea that this whole microscopic world existed. Okay, they knew how to make things out of metal, and they knew how to build houses, and they knew how to build castles, and how to build cannons, stuff like that. But they didn't know that there existed a whole microscopic world. Okay, so two people. You got to know these names for the T's. That's why I'm talking about this. It's cool. I find it interesting, but I don't just want to entertain you. I'm giving you these names because you got to know them for the T's. Two scientists. Okay, a British guy by the name of Robert Hooke and a Dutch guy by the name of Antoine van Leeuwenhoek, sort of both discovered microscopes. They both made simple microscopes. You got to know these two names. Late 1600s. And they made these very simple microscopes, and they saw some of the coolest things. Right? They looked at tiny little flea, as you can see on the slide, and they saw all these intricate parts, and it's like, whoa, this thing is crazy. Look at this detail. They looked at pieces of wood. And as you can see over here on the right side of the slide, they saw all these like crazy little cells that looked like little blocks. They were like the first people to see cells. And they also looked at drops of water and looked at, their spit from their teeth. And they saw all these creatures, crawling around in it. And the whole microscopic world was like the gates were opened. Okay, it was wild. And so these two people didn't just really discover microscopes, they also sort of started all of microbiology because suddenly they realized, whoa, there's this whole other world of creatures out there that we've never really seen before. So these names and the idea that microscopes and microscopy and microbiology were sort of invented in the late 1600s are important on the T's. And they often have questions about this, about the history here, which is kind of weird, like having to memorize these names or whatever. But I don't know. The T's is weird in many ways. It's just kind of something you got to know. And so, for that reason, right, you might see a question just like this. Okay. And now you know how to answer it. Which scientist contributed greatly to this discovery of microscopes and microbiology? Was it A, Isaac Newton, B, Robert Hooke, C, Nicholas Copernicus, or D, Albert Einstein? And because we've just talked about the important stuff to know, you know right away. It is Robert Hooke was one of the two people who invented microscopes. Also, Antoine van Leeuwenhoek is another one that you want to know. So there you go. Already, we're already getting you ready for the T's. Okay. Now, so because we've grown up around microscopes and we have lots and lots and lots of scientists and doctors who are using microscopes all the time, we know a lot about the microscopic world. We know that microbes exist. Even kids know that germs and bacteria and microbes exist. And, when we think about microbes, we usually think about disease, right? People see microbes in water with a microscope or they think about them and they usually said something like this, right? They're like, yuck, microbes are gross. They make you sick. You stay away from them. Well, that's not really true, actually, right? First of all, it's difficult to stay away from microbes because they're pretty much everywhere. Every Pretty much every surface in the world, except like something that has just been sterilized, like before surgery or something, But pretty much everything else is covered with microbes. You can't get away from them, right? You can't stay away from microbes. Yeah, some microbes do cause disease, but most microbes do not. So microbes everywhere, but most of them don't cause disease. And most of the microbes out there are harmless or they're even helpful. Okay? That's something that so many people don't realize. Yes, a tiny fraction of the microbes out there make us sick. Most of them are harmless or they do important jobs. Here's some of the jobs they do. Okay? Microbes can be decomposers. They break down stuff that is dead or that it's garbage, right? When a deer dies in the forest, its body breaks down, it rots, it eventually turns into dirt. And that's because microbes, fungi, bacteria, stuff like that, are breaking down that dead animal. Same thing with, garbage. Garbage eventually starts to rot, particularly things like paper and food scraps, dead logs in a forest too, right? If we didn't have microbes, a tree would die in the forest and it would just like never rot. There'd just be like dead animals everywhere. There would never be dead people too, but like the dead animals everywhere that would never rot, never get rid of them. It would be terrible. So we need microbes for this. Microbes in our bodies also help us with many jobs, many, many jobs. It's part of the reason why people take probiotics because we're realizing how important it is to have certain types of bacteria in our bodies. A great example of that is certain bacteria in our guts help help our bodies make vitamin K, and some types of bacteria also make certain B vitamins for us too. So it's like they're helping us out. Bacteria help living things absorb nutrients. It can create oxygen, stuff like this. So it's like microbes don't just cause disease. Most are harmless. Many are helpful. They break things down. They help our bodies function, stuff like that. Now, having said that, we got to shift gears a little bit, right? We could talk about microbiology from many different perspectives. There's lots and lots of cool stuff to talk about with microbiology. But this is the T's, right? And the T's is all about healthcare. And so even though only some microbes cause disease, since we're talking about healthcare with the T's, we are going to be focusing on the small fraction of bad boys that do cause disease. Okay, so that's going to be our major focus. It's going to be this tiny fraction of microbes that cause disease because that's what you need to know for the T's, right? Like there are lots and lots of things you probably learned in a micro class, but here we're going to talk about the bad boys that cause disease because that's what you're going to need for the teas. I don't want to waste your time with anything that's not important. So, if you study the microbes that cause disease, okay, scientists study the microbes that cause disease, and you look at how they act and what they look like, you can group the microbes that cause disease into four main categories: viruses, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Okay. Each one of these types of microbes look different. They have different characteristics. They behave in different ways. But these are the four categories of microbes or microorganisms that cause disease. Okay. People often ask, how actually do microbes cause disease? And the answer is pretty simple, actually. And most people don't realize this. Okay. Here's the answer. They cause disease because they want to live in or on your body. Okay? Your body is a really nice place for microbes to live. And they make you sick because they want to live in your body, they want to live on your body, and they want to get food and resources from your body. And having these organisms living inside you, trying to take your food, trying to attach to your cells so that they can get a little food from them and stuff like that, that makes you sick. You have these things that don't belong in your body that are trying to take your food and resources, and that makes you sick. They make you sick in different ways, but fundamentally, that's what it is. It's like they want to live in your body and they want to make you sick. So we have viruses, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa are the four types of microbes that we need to know about that make you sick. All of them are microscopic. All of them are typically too small to see with the naked eye. So here's a question right off the bat. Which of the following is not considered a microbe? Bacteria, fungi, protozoan, or worm? Okay, so microbe. What are we talking about here? Microbe. Microorganism. This is something that is too small to see without a microscope, too small to see with the naked eye. All right. So, yeah, people know this. Wanted to make something that was pretty straightforward. Worm. Okay. And if you saw a question like this on the teas, you'd immediately know how to answer it. A lot of people see protozoan and it freaks them out. They're like, I don't know what protozoan, and they choose the one that they don't know. But no, remember, protozoans is one of the four kinds of microbes. There's also something else that I should mention. Protozoa are sometimes also called protists. Now, the teas doesn't really use this. Sometimes they do, but you know the teas. Maybe they don't use it now, but tomorrow they'll start, just trying to use some really frustrating word that nobody's ever heard of before. So they might just start talking about protists all of a sudden. Who knows? Okay. So we can start looking at different similarities and differences between these microbes. And if we look at these four different categories of microbe, there is one that doesn't fit. One of these things is not like the other. Okay? And that is bacteria, fungi, and protozoa are different, but they all have something in common. They are all made of cells. And they're considered living things. They might be tiny, they might be made of, individual cells, but those cells can grow, they can reproduce, they can pull in food, they can respond to their environment. They are living things. They are made of cells. One of these things is not like the other. The one that is not like the other is viruses. Viruses also make us sick. They're also microbes, but they are not made of cells. They are not considered living things. Okay? So, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, made of cells, living things. Viruses, not made of cells, not considered living things. And for that reason, we're gonna talk about viruses in about 5 minutes. But for right now, I'm gonna push them aside so that we can focus on the three types of microorganisms that are living and that are made of cells. So, poop. get rid of viruses. We'll talk about those in a minute. Right now, we're going to focus on this. The tease likes to tease. Gosh, do they ever? Well, microbiology, of course, microbiology can be on the tease. I mean, I don't want to be like mean, but like, why would I be talking about this if it weren't on the tease? Like, I'm not trying to waste your time. Like, yes, the microbiology will be on the tease. Like I'm not like, please, I'm not trying to like be mean or make fun of you or anything. Like, but like, yes, this is going to be on the tease. Like, that's why we're like talking about it. Microbiology is one of the sections of life science. There's typically 1 to 2 microbiology questions that show up on the tease. And so we're talking about this because I'm trying to uh, get you ready for the most common types of microbiology questions that you're going to need to know for the tease. So yes, very important to know. This stuff is super important to know. Okay, anyway, let me know. Let me know if you got any other questions. So bacteria, fungi, and protozoa, all made of cells. Now, their cells are different. If we, oh, sorry here. The tease study guide doesn't go into depth about it. No, it doesn't. But if you look at, there are, I got my tease study guide right here. In the life and physical sciences section, it is section S.2.5. Describe the role of microorganisms in disease. Okay, if you're looking at, it's on page 222. If you're looking at the 2023, 2024, 2025 ATI book. Yeah, objective S.2.5. Describe the role of microorganisms in disease. That's why we're talking about it. But here's the thing. I say this all the time. Most TEAS books and videos are garbage. Okay? The ATI book is garbage, but it is the least garbage of all the garbage books. Okay? So it's like, it's, you know, the ATI book is like, I don't know, an apple that's kind of bruised, and the other stuff is like pizza that's covered with mold. Okay. And the ATI book is garbage, but less garbage than everything else. But just because the guide doesn't spend a lot of time on something, it doesn't mean it's not important. Okay. As I always say, there is stuff on the test that's not in the ATI book. There is stuff in the ATI book that is not on the test. So there's like 4 or 5 pages in microbiology on the ATI book. There's pretty much always at least one microbiology question on the TEAS. At least one. So it's like, maybe it would seem like it's not super important because there are more pages on other topics on the TEAS, but like microbiology is super important on the TEAS. Like, it's as important as all the other life science topics. So that's how it is. Anyway, yes, can I cover A and P? I am making new videos as quickly as I can. I totally am. I am making them as quickly as I can. So anyway, keep the questions going. I love hearing all the questions that you got. Okay, so anyway, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa are all made of cells, but there are some important differences. If we looked at these cells under the microscope, we would see that the cells that make up bacteria are pretty small compared to the fungi and protozoa cells. And we would also see that they are much simpler. The bacteria have very simple cells. Fungi and protozoa have more complex or complicated cells that are also bigger. We can give these different names. The simple cells from the bacteria are called prokaryotes. And the fungi and protozoa, those cells, we call those eukaryotes. Okay? Let's look at some of the similarities and differences. Okay? We have prokaryotes over here, which are bacteria, and eukaryotes. Now, eukaryotes are fungi and protozoans, but also animals and plants are examples of eukaryotes. So that means that animals and plants are similar to fungi and protozoans. Bacteria are kind of in a category of their own. Now, as we said before, okay, bacteria, prokaryotes, are small compared to the eukaryotes, which are much larger. Prokaryotes are also simple compared to eukaryotes, which are more complex. The analogy that I like to use is that a prokaryote, like a bacterial cell, is like a go-kart. A eukaryote is like a car. Okay? A go-kart has sort of all the parts of a car. It's got a little engine, it's got a little accelerator, it's maybe got a little brake. But a eukaryote is like way more complicated. So we got the prokaryotes or the go-karts. The eukaryotes are like a Lamborghini. Okay? Small and simple versus large and complex. Now, let's look at some of the specific differences. Okay, the first thing, I want you to look here at the nucleus. Eukaryotes, if you've watched any of my videos about cells, I have a bunch of videos about cells. They're on YouTube. You can watch them for free if you want. I talk a lot about the nucleus. And the nucleus is this part here in the middle of the cell that holds the DNA. Animal cells have that. Plant cells have that. Fungi have them. Protozoans have them. Nucleus holds the DNA. Nucleus holds DNA. Prokaryotes, no nucleus. The DNA is just floating around in the middle of the cell. There's no nucleus, right? They don't even have a nucleus. They don't have something to keep the DNA safe. DNA is just floating around everywhere. Okay? That's one major difference. Another major difference is look at all these organelles. Okay? Eukaryotes they have mitochondria. Plants have chloroplasts. They have the Golgi apparatus. They have the endoplasmic reticulum. They've got lysosomes. They've got this. They've got that. They've got lots of other things. They have organelles, and we call that are membrane bound, which means they are surrounded by membranes. The mitochondria has a membrane around it. The nucleus has a membrane around it. The chloroplast have a membrane around it. I mean, chloroplasts and mitochondria actually have two membranes around them. Nucleus also has two membranes. But the point is, there are organelles in eukaryotes. There are in prokaryotes. There are no organelles surrounded by membranes. No membrane-bound organelles. Now, prokaryotes and eukaryotes do have things in common. Okay, they're both cells. Even though a prokaryote, a bacteria, is simple, it has cells, right? It's made of cells. And these cells, in both cases, what do they both have together? Membrane. Cell membrane. They both have a cell membrane because the cell membrane keeps the outsides out, it keeps the insides in. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes both have a membrane. They both have DNA. It's just in a eukaryote, the DNA is in the nucleus, and the prokaryote just swimming around all over the place. It's not kept safe in a nucleus. They also have things like ribosomes. They both have ribosomes because you need ribosomes to make protein. So they have these like basic things in common: cell membrane, DNA, ribosome, stuff like that. But the eukaryotes have a nucleus. They've got membrane-bound organelles like Golgi apparatus, and they've got chloroplasts and mitochondria and lysosomes, and you name it. Prokaryotes don't have any of that. Just a whole bunch of stuff just floating around in the middle of the cell. So Exactly. Um, are these saved for later? Yeah, I'm gonna post it on YouTube tomorrow, probably. It might take a little while before it gets up on YouTube, but yes, it will be saved for later. I promise. Um, so glory be the just so you know, um, pro doesn't really mean no. I mean, if it helps, you can think about it meaning no. Karyote actually means nucleus, and you here means true. It means that these eukaryotes have a nucleus. They have a true nucleus. They have a real nucleus. Prokaryote actually means pro means before, means before nucleus. And so when scientists look at how cells evolved over the years, they come to the conclusion that um, bacteria were around before cells had a nucleus. So they are prokaryotes, they are before the nucleus. And then eukaryotes have a true nucleus, actually have a real nucleus. So, anyway, that's that. That, Carla, that is like the nicest thing for you to say. Uh, I'm glad that I help you pass the T's. I like that you agree that everything else out there is garbage. I know I can be a little controversial sometimes, but yeah, I really try to make stuff that is different and that actually helps people and doesn't just like recite a bunch of definitions and stuff like that. So anyway, prokaryotes and eukaryotes, bacteria are examples of prokaryotes. They are small, they are simple, they have no nucleus, they have no membrane bound organelles. Fungi and protozoa are more complicated. They're eukaryotes. They have a nucleus. They have organelles. They are bigger. They are more complex. They are more similar to animals and plants. And as a side note, often protozoan infections and fungi infections, people get sick with fungi and protozoans. Those infections are often harder to treat. And that's because since fungi and protozoa are eukaryotes, they're very similar to animal cells. They're very similar to our cells. And so it's very difficult to come up with drugs that kill like a fungus, but that don't kill a person. Bacteria are so different from us that it's much easier to come up with drugs that kill a bacteria and don't harm us. But since fungi are eukaryotes and we are eukaryotes, it's kind of like, something that kills a fungus might also kill a person. So you got to be really careful. Anyway, we've talked about prokaryotes and eukaryotes, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Boom. Let's take a look at a question. Which of the following are present in fungi and protozoa, but are not present in bacteria? I'm just going to zip it for a minute. I want you guys to read over this and spend a minute answering it yourself. This is like textbook T's question. Like a question like exactly like this is like classic T's. So think about it. See if you can answer it for yourself. I'm not going to say anything until I see a couple comments. Think it through. Which of the following are present in fungi and protozoa but are not present in bacteria? And if you don't know it, that's okay, right? That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this right now. As I often say, like I want to give you the hard questions now so you're ready for the T's. I don't just want to give you like fake easy questions so that you feel good about yourself. Like I want you to feel good about yourself, but I want you to feel good about yourself because you crushed the T's. Like I don't want to go too easy on you. I want you to mess up here so you feel okay about things, you learn, and then you're ready to crush the stuff when you see it on the T's. You don't know, that's okay. Let's take it step by step. Okay, we're gonna take this step by step. Okay, what do we know about fungi and protozoa? We know that these are eukaryotes. Okay, what do we know about bacteria? We know that they are prokaryotes. I'm running out of space here. Now, Prokaryotes. When we think prokaryote, what do they not have? No nucleus, no real organelles. So let's go through this list step by step. What are present in fungi and protozoa, but are not present in bacteria? Cell membrane. No. Everybody has a cell membrane. If you're a cell, you have a cell membrane. Prokaryotes have a cell membrane. Eukaryotes have a cell membrane. DNA. All cells have DNA. If you're a prokaryote, you have DNA. If you're a eukaryote, you have DNA. If you're a cell, you have DNA. Membrane-bound nucleus. What do you think? Prokaryotes. No nucleus. C. Membrane-bound nucleus. Prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. Their DNA is just floating around in the middle of the cell. There's no nucleus. Mitochondria. Well, what's a mitochondria? A mitochondria is an organelle. Prokaryotes do not have any real organelles. So mitochondria is also correct. Ribosomes. Ribosomes are used for making protein. Prokaryotes need to make protein. Eukaryotes need to make protein. All cells need to make protein. So ribosomes are not correct. The two main things that prokaryotes, bacteria, don't have: no nucleus, no real organelles. So they do not have a membrane-bound nucleus, and they do not have mitochondria. They do have a cell membrane, they do have DNA, and they do have ribosomes. Okay, so C and D. Any questions about that? For folks who were worried about it before, how you feeling now? Is it making a little more sense? I hope so. If not, just let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. So way before, we talked about how one of these things was not like the other. Viruses were different from bacteria, fungi, and protozoa because viruses were not made of cells. We talked about the ones that were made of cells, and now I want to focus on viruses because viruses are something you got to know about for the TEAS. Viruses are considered non-living. Why do we consider them non-living? Well, one, they're not made of cells. Viruses cannot grow on their own. Viruses cannot reproduce on their own. Viruses have to rely on a host cell. And they take advantage of the host cell, or they hijack the host cell to reproduce. So they do this in a different way than, bacteria and protozoa and fungi are just, they're made of cells. Viruses are not made of cells. So if we look at a virus, it's like super simple. Even a prokaryote has a cell membrane, and it's got DNA, and it's got ribosomes, and it's doing transcription, it's doing translation, it's all sorts of stuff is happening inside even a very simple bacteria. And a bacteria can swim around usually. Bacteria can grow. A bacteria divides. It splits in two to reproduce. Even in a simple bacteria, tons of stuff is going on. In a virus, it's so simple. Not made of cells. This is all you get in a virus. It is so much smaller than any cell. A virus is tiny compared to cells. Here's all you get. Here are two pictures of virus. You have in a virus a little bit of DNA or RNA, and then you have a protein shell. I didn't spell protein right, proteny, but you know what I'm talking about. It's called the capsid. That's all a virus is. It's a little bit of DNA or RNA surrounded by a protein shell. It's like a candy almost. Like imagine you have like a chewy center of DNA surrounded by a hard protein shell. That is all you get in a virus. DNA or RNA, we call that the genome or the nucleic acid. You know what nucleic acids are? They're biomolecules that carry genetic information, carry instructions. So inside of a virus, there's a tiny little bit of DNA or RNA, and there's a protein shell that surrounds it. And that's all you get. That's all that you have in a virus. Okay. So here is how viruses reproduce. This is something you got to know for the T's. Viruses have to hijack living cells. Here we have a virus. There's a virus right there. Okay. Now, if the virus wants to reproduce, if it wants to make more copies of itself, here's what it's got to do. It goes up to a cell and it attaches to the cell and it spits its DNA or RNA into the cell. Okay. The next thing that it does is that DNA or RNA takes over the cell. It hijacks the cell. And it tells the cell, you are going to make more copies of virus now. You're going to use your enzymes, you're going to use your proteins, you're going to use your ribosomes to make more copies of virus. The virus DNA or RNA hijacks the cell and turns it into a factory for making more copies of virus. So now the cell that was just happily going about its job gets hijacked by this virus DNA or a virus RNA. And now the only thing it can do is make more copies of virus. It turns into a factory for making more and more viruses. And eventually, as you can see here at the very end, step 4, the cell gets just like filled up with viruses. In many cases, it gets so filled up that it bursts and thousands of viruses just like sprout out all over the place. They explode out all over the place because the cell was forced to make all those copies of virus and then it just burst. The cell and the viruses just go poof all over the place. And then they will then go find more cells and infect those cells and so on and so forth. Make sense? So as you can see, the way a virus reproduces is like super different than a cell, right? Because when a cell reproduces, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just gets really big, and then it just starts splitting in two. No, a virus has to find a host cell, and it has to put its DNA or RNA in. It has to take over the cell. It has to direct the cell, force the cell to make more copies of virus, and then eventually the cell just gets taken over by all the viruses and it often bursts. Okay? So, this is why we consider viruses non-living. They can't grow, they can't reproduce, they can't do anything unless they are hijacking a host cell. And as you can imagine, when this is happening inside your body, it makes you sick because this virus is taking over your own cells and forcing them to make more virus. And then those cells are breaking apart, they're splitting as more and more viruses enter your body. So, now that we've talked about this, let's look at a question that the T's would ask about viruses. Which of the following is true of viruses? A, they are made of cells. B, they are typically considered non-living. C, they require a living host cell for reproduction. D, their genetic material is always RNA, not DNA. Think about it. Think about it, think about it, think about it. A, they are made of cells. B, they are typically considered non-living. C, they require a living host cell for reproduction. D, their genetic material is always RNA, not DNA. Oh God, oh my goodness. I wrote this question, such a bad question. Because two of the answers are right. I'm not on the top of my game today. Let's pretend this is a select all that apply. I'm so sorry. Like, tell me what I can do to like make it up to you. Like, tell me what I can do. Tell me what I can do to make it up to you. Like, I'm so sorry. This should be select all that apply. so okay. In my defense, okay, like I don't know where you all are living, but where I am right now, it is hot as hell. And I am up in my little attic that I have, okay? And I usually have the AC going, but because I'm doing the live stream, I got my microphone. Yeah, I don't want it to be too loud, so I've turned off the AC. It's like the temperature is getting like hotter and hotter here. I'm like got sweat going down my face. It's like it's like blame it on the heat. It's so hot in here. I need some water. I'm sorry, my brain is not working right. It's so hot in here. So anyway, oh God, this water tastes awful. Oh my goodness. It's been sitting there for like a week and it has things growing in it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Um, let me just I'll be right back. I'm just gonna like get a drink from the just think about the question. I'll be right back. Oh, that was so nasty. This glass of water that's been up here for like a week. Oh, yuck. I will probably be okay, right? Just like I said, like most microbes are harmless. There were definitely microbes in that drink, though. I will, I will probably be okay. They're probably harmless. It's probably gonna be okay. Okay. Um, man, that tasted so bad though. Okay. So yes, for those of you who are confused, B and C are correct here. Okay. Viruses are typically considered non-living, and also viruses typically require a living host cell for reproduction. Um, Viruses are not made of cells, and D is wrong because the genetic material is always RNA, not DNA. No, no, no. The genetic material might be RNA or it might be DNA. Okay, might be RNA, might be DNA. Okay, okay. I'm so happy to see all of these like correct answers in the chat. It just like makes me so happy because people are really getting this, and I know this is difficult stuff. So as we said, there are these four types of microbes: viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa. Really quick review, right? These three are made of cells. These are not, no cells. Bacteria are prokaryotic cells, without a nuclei, without any real organelles. Fungi and protozoa are eukaryotic cells that do have a nucleus, that do have real organelles. Let's rank these: biggest, medium, tiniest. Eukaryotic cells would be biggest. Prokaryotic cells would be smaller than eukaryotic. And viruses, tiny, 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 tiny. So there we go. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay. let's talk about microscopes. Okay. As we've said, microscopes are tools that magnify and allow us to see microorganisms. Okay. Now, there are many ways that we can use microscopes. For the T's, we don't have to know all the details. Again, if you've taken a micro class, you've probably done lots of different things with microscopes. You might have looked at stuff like pond water. I bet if you've taken a micro class, you've done something called gram staining, where you use different dyes to stain bacterial cells different colors. And if they're, dark purple, it means they're one kind of bacteria. If they're kind of the reddish pink color that you see on the right, they're another type of bacteria. We can stain. We can use different stains for fungal cells. We can stain them usually blue. And I bet you've done all sorts of stuff. Even if you've just taken high school biology, you might have done some stuff like this. Using microscopes like that. Now, there are other types of microscopes that we don't usually use in like a micro class in college or high school biology class, and they can give some beautiful images. You might have seen in like an anatomy and physiology book some examples that have been taken with a fluorescence microscope. Oh, it can give you these beautiful, almost like artistic images where you use complex chemicals to make different parts of the cell glow in different ways. So there are ways that you can use a fluorescence microscope to like make the nucleus glow a certain color, or you can make the cytoskeleton glow another color and stuff like that. I had the chance to do some of that when I was doing my PhD, and it was so cool. I'd make these like beautiful fluorescent images and blow the images up and like, put them on my wall. People had thought they were like art, and it's like, no, that's like, bacteria that I took a picture of with a fluorescence microscope. Phase contrast microscopes can give you can be very useful for seeing certain details of cells. And we could go on and on and on talking about all these different types of microscopes. But the truth of the matter is that for the T's, there's only one real thing that you need to know. They give you all these different types of microscopes, but there's only one thing that you need to know. And that is that all microscopes, we can group them into one of two categories. Do they use light to see, or do they use electrons to see? That's the only thing you have to worry about for the T's. That's the only way that the T's is going to approach this stuff. Okay? So all the stuff up here, all of these microscopes up here, all of these, how should I do this? All of these use light. Bright field, dark field, phase contrast, fluorescence, confocal scanning laser, differential interference contrast, DIC. These are all light microscopes. They all use light. These two, the scanning electron microscope, the transmission electron microscope, use electrons to see. Now, you might even think you have to memorize fluorescence microscope and confocal scanning. No, all you have to be able to do is recognize the electron microscopes. Here's why. Electron microscopes are a special type of microscope that provide us incredible magnification and resolution. Okay? The images that you see here are just these stunning images that we can see in such close up because of the capabilities of an electron microscope. On the left, we have some kind of like, I don't know exactly what that is. I should have checked. I'm guessing it's some sort of tiny egg and like a nematode, maybe a tiny, tiny animal. On the right, we have grains of pollen. Electron microscopes can't see in color. So when you see images like this that have color, that someone has like added the color in Photoshop or something afterwards, but they give these absolutely beautiful images with incredible magnification and resolution. And the reason that they can give us such incredible magnification is because they use electrons instead of light. And one thing that the T's might ask you about is, why is this? Well, because light and electrons have differences in how they move. Okay? Both electrons and light move as waves. So they kind of go up and down on the way to wherever they're headed. Okay. So light looks like this. Kind of goes, a light wave goes kind of like this on its way to wherever. Electrons look like this. This distance here we call wavelength. Electrons have a much smaller wavelength than light, and that allows electrons to see things with much greater resolution because these have such a small wavelength. Small wavelength. Okay. Light has a longer wavelength that limits the resolution of what you can see when you're looking at really, really tiny things. Electrons have a much smaller wavelength. They buzz zzz on their way from one place to another. They have a small wavelength, and that very small wavelength allows them to reveal much more detail. Okay, that's all you need to know for the T's. All you need to know that electron microscopes provide incredible magnification and resolution, and they do that because electrons have such a smaller wavelength compared to the longer wavelength of light. Now, a lot of times people see electron microscope pictures in a textbook or their teachers show them to them and they ask, what, like, why don't we use electron microscopes for everything? Because the images are freaking amazing. Well, yeah, they are, but here's the thing. An electron microscope is like tremendously expensive. Electron microscopes take up the size of a whole room. Okay. They're like all these things that make the electrons. You've got to have a computer hooked up to it, stuff like that. Takes up a whole room. And then the other thing is, electrons don't really travel through air very well. So whenever you're looking at something in an electron microscope, you have to put it in like a special chamber and then pump all the air out. You have to put it into a vacuum, which means you can't look at anything that's alive because it has to happen in a vacuum. And you have to do all sorts of very careful sample preparation. You have to suck the air, you have to suck the water out of it, you have to dehydrate it. You have to cover it sometimes with a metal, with a thin coating of metal. It just takes forever to get something ready to look at in the electron microscope. You get these beautiful images, but it is not something that you can use just like day to day. And that's why we still use regular light microscopes, do gram staining and stuff like that, because electron microscopes they're a real specialty item. They're a real specialty item. If Punnett squares are killing you for the test tomorrow, I have a video on Punnett squares. Check it out on YouTube. So again, when the TEAS is going to ask you about microscopes, they are just going to be asking which ones give you good resolution, which ones give you good magnification, and you are going to look for the electrons, high resolution. That's all you need to know. When the TEAS asks you, which microscope would you use to look at something very, very tiny with a very, very high magnification? You're just going to look for electron microscope. That's all. You don't have to worry about any of this other nonsense. Oh, would I use a confocal scanning laser microscope? No. High resolution, high magnification, electron microscope. Boom. Here's an example. A scientist is interested in studying the structure of virus particles. The most appropriate microscope for this purpose would be phase contrast, scanning electron, differential interference contrast, or polarized light. Think about it. This is not select all that apply, I promise you. What are we thinking here? What are we thinking here? Yeah, we're on a roll. We're on a roll. I'm so happy to see this. This is how microscopes are going to show up on the TEAS, right? It's going to be like, which would you use use the electron microscope. Now, the reason why is because we're talking about structure of virus particles. Well, remember, viruses, tiny, tiny, tiny. Viruses are so freaking small. So, for that purpose, if we are going to see them, we have to see, if we want to look at them, we got to use something that can really see something up close, small, scanning electron microscope. That's all you got to look for. Electron microscope. Why can they see things with such high resolution, such high magnification? Because they have a tiny wavelength compared to light. Long wavelength, short wavelength for electrons. Don't forget it. Any questions? Any more questions before we move on? Any more questions? The last section that we're going to talk about, the last thing you really need to know is microbes and disease. And even though this is under the microbiology section, it includes other stuff that is not just microbes. The TEAS is going to give you different diseases, and you have to know what causes those diseases. Okay? So, the first thing that we need to do is we need to learn some terminology. Okay? So, when we're talking about microbes and disease, there are some main ideas here. Okay? One, the idea of a parasite. A parasite is something that lives in or on the body and tries, I should have changed that there, tries to take resources from it. So in all these cases, when I said bacteria or fungus or whatever lives in or on the body and tries to take resources, it is acting as a parasite. And then we have a host. The host is the body that the parasite lives on. Okay? Now, when parasites live on a host, they usually cause illness or disease. That means that they are pathogens. A pathogen is any microorganism that causes disease. And finally, disease is what happens when the body does not function normally. Okay? Parasites, host, pathogens, and disease. These are important to know. Now, I also want to point out that animals can cause disease. We have been looking at microbes or microorganisms that cause disease, right? We've been looking at viruses. We've been looking at fungi. We've been looking at bacteria and protozoa. And these all can cause disease, but also animals can cause disease. And the animals that cause disease are usually worms, particularly in underdeveloped countries. People can get worm infections, worms in their intestines, worms in their skin. And so there are diseases that can be caused by animals. Okay? Now, animals are not considered microbes because if you have a worm disease, you can see the worms. So animals can, yes, cause disease, but they are not microbes. That's just kind of a distinction that I wanted to point out here. Animals are not microbes, but they can cause disease. Now, here is what you're going to have to do for the TEAS. Here is a question. Let's get to the question. Mosquitoes are animals? Absolutely, mosquitoes are animals. Mosquitoes are animals. I think I know where you're going, though. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Mosquitoes are animals. You may be thinking about diseases like malaria that are carried by mosquitoes, but malaria is caused by a protozoan. The malaria, malaria does not. Let me collect my thoughts here. Malaria is a disease that's caused when a protozoan gets in your blood. Now, how does a protozoan get in your blood? Because a mosquito bites you. The malaria microbe is in the mosquito. The mosquito gives you a little injection, basically, when it tries to suck your blood, and the protozoan gets into your blood. The mosquito is not causing the malaria. The mosquito is carrying the protozoan that causes malaria. We'll talk about that in a minute, right? But so So yeah, so the mosquito is not the cause of infection. The mosquito is just carrying the protozoan that gets in your body. It's similar to rabies, which you may know, right? Rabies is a virus. It's carried by animals, by mammals that have that are infected with rabies themselves. They have the virus in their saliva, right? So it's like, let's say that somebody gets rabies because they get bitten by a dog that has rabies. Okay, the dog isn't causing the rabies. The virus in the dog's saliva is causing the rabies. So yeah, exactly like rabies. So yeah, so that's kind of how malaria works. It's the protozoan that is in the spit essentially of the mosquito that's causing malaria. But regardless, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of diseases in a little bit. So you're going to get pretty comfortable with these. The tease is going to give you a disease, and it's going to ask you what the cause is. And and we can break this down in a different way, in a couple different ways. Okay, so disease can be infectious, or it can be non-infectious. Now, if a disease is infectious, that means that it can spread from person to person, or you can get it from the environment. Okay, so an infectious disease, the flu. Somebody else has a flu, they sneeze on me, I get it. I could also get an infectious disease like malaria from the environment. A mosquito bites me, a dog bites me, and I get rabies. Okay, it's not spread person to person. Well, maybe you say, oh, well, it's spread from somebody that, okay, rabies is a bad example. Let's take some fungus infection that you get on your skin because you touched the ground and had maybe, think about this nasty water that I drank that had, maybe I got an infection from the environment, right? But that's the point. It's infectious. You can get it from another person. You can get it from the environment. Okay. Infectious disease can be caused by microbes that we talked about earlier, viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, or animals. Non-infectious diseases are ones that don't spread from person to person, don't spread from the environment. And basically, there's a non-infectious diseases are usually a little bit more complicated in terms of what causes them, but it's usually a combination of genetic, lifestyle, and things like age, right? So if somebody has heart disease, that might be because of lifestyle, because of genetics or whatever. But so that's like these are the kinds of disease categories that we're going to need to know for the T's. This is kind of the same thing here. I just want to point out two things here. Infectious disease spread from one person to another or come from the environment. They're also called communicable, transmissible, or communicable. Non-infectious disease do not spread from people or from environment. Okay? So, for the T's, like, I wish there were an easier way to do this, but it's just like you have to know a bunch of diseases and what causes them. Because they're going to ask you a question that's like, what causes gonorrhea? Is it a virus or is it a bacterium or is it and you just got to know it. And I think for people who've taken micro, you've gotten used to a lot of these diseases. For people who've already worked in healthcare, you probably already know a lot of these diseases. For people who just, lived for 20, 30 years, you've run into a lot of these diseases. But there's some that you're going to have to brush up on a little bit. It's just the way it is. I'm going to make a set of flashcards. I'm going to make a set of like Quizlet flashcards. I'll put a link in the description below this video after, after I post it and stuff. It'll take me a day or two to get those out, and you can practice this. But at the end of the day, for these kind of questions on the T's, you've just got to like learn these common diseases and know what causes them, right? So, you don't need to know too much about the symptoms, but sometimes for me, it's easier to memorize things if I know a little bit more about them. So here are some common bacteria diseases, okay, that you should know, that you should be familiar with for the T's, okay? Anthrax, which is a very serious respiratory disease caused by bacteria. Chlamydia, it's an STI, bacteria. Cholera causes diarrhea, bacteria. Gonorrhea, there's another STI, STD, bacteria. Leptospirosis and Lyme disease are two caused by bacteria. Leptospirosis is caught from infected animals, gives you flu symptoms. Lyme disease is spread by tick bites. So those are kind of like malaria. For Lyme disease, it's not the tick that's infecting you, it's the bacteria that's in the tick's saliva. There's a disease called MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is a very serious skin infection caused by the Staphylococcus aureus bacteria. Strep throat is caused by the Streptococcus bacteria. There's syphilis, which is another STD that causes neurological symptoms, syphilis. There's tuberculosis, which is a long-term serious lung infection caused by bacteria. And tetanus, which is sometimes called lockjaw because it gives you these severe muscle spasms. That's also caused by bacteria. So some of the most common bacteria diseases that you should know for the T's: anthrax, chlamydia, cholera, gonorrhea, leptospirosis, Lyme disease, MRSA, strep throat, syphilis, tuberculosis, tetanus. Just got to know them. Like, I wish there were an easier way. This is one of those things for the T's you got to memorize. Got to memorize. How about some viruses? AIDS is not a virus, but AIDS is caused by a virus. AIDS is caused by the HIV virus, or caused by HIV. And it causes immune system dysfunction. COVID-19. We all know COVID. Obviously, virus. Chicken pox. When I was a kid, people used to get chicken pox. No one gets chicken pox anymore because most people get the vaccine. But I got chicken pox. That's a virus. Common cold is caused by a virus, something called dengue fever, mosquito-borne, common in South America, also a virus. Herpes. There's genital herpes. There's oral herpes. It causes a painful rash and blisters. That's a virus. HIV obviously causes AIDS. That's a virus. The flu, known as influenza. There's a virus. Measles. That's a virus. Causes a rash, high fever. Mumps causes swelling of the salivary glands. Mumps, that's a virus. And rubella, there's another virus called German measles. Gives you a skin rash. So AIDS, COVID, chickenpox, common cold, dengue fever, herpes, HIV, influenza, measles, mumps, and rubella, super common viral diseases. And then finally, we have some protozoal diseases. Malaria is transmitted by mosquitoes. It gives you fever, headache. It's terrible. Terrible. It's a protozoan. It's really hard to get rid of malaria. It can be hard to get rid of malaria. What is known as African sleeping sickness is caused by a bite from the tsetse fly. And it starts with flu-like symptoms that progress to confusion and seizures and coma. It's also terrible, caused by a protozoan. And then there is trichomoniasis, which is an STD. It's an STD that a lot of people haven't heard of. Sometimes it doesn't cause symptoms that are particularly bad, so people can have this and not know, and it's usually not a super big deal. But is also caused by a protozoan. Sometimes it's just referred to as trichomoniasis. But yeah, it's like the T's for some reason loves protozoans, maybe just because they're weird. So malaria, sleeping sickness, trichomoniasis are all good ones to know for protozoan diseases. And then we have common fungal diseases. Okay, mycosis is a name for any fungal infection. Okay, now fungus includes yeast and mold. That's just something. Yeast and mold are both types of fungus. Just so you know. So some common fungal diseases are, one is called ringworm. Okay, and ringworm, also called tinea, is a fungal infection of the skin or of the scalp or of the nails. Ringworm is not a worm. The tease loves this because, as you know, the tease loves to mess with you, right? The tease loves to trick you. Ringworm is not a worm. It's a fungal infection that can cause an itchy circular rash on the skin. If you get it in your groin area, it's sometimes called jock itch. If you get it on your foot, it's called athlete's foot. But it's the same. It's a fungus on your skin. Okay. Yeast can also cause infections in the vagina. Then you've got what you refer to as a yeast infection. But you can get yeast other places too. You can get a yeast infection other places. You can get yeast on your skin. You can get yeast in the mouth, which causes something called thrush. And in severe cases, you can get fungus in your lungs and blood and other areas. We're not worried specifically about too many of the names here because there's so many different types of fungus that can get in blood and so many different kinds of yeast and stuff like that. That the only thing that's important is just to know that like a yeast infection is caused by fungus. Okay, ringworm is caused by fungus. Athlete's foot, jock itch are caused by fungus. Okay, that's all you need to know. You need to know that ringworm is not a worm. Finally, here's some diseases that are caused by animal parasites. Parasitic worms are referred to as helminths. Okay, and as we said before, helminths, animal parasites, these parasitic worms are not microbes. They can be seen with the naked eye. They can cause disease, but they're not microbes. We have flatworms or tapeworms that live in intestines and cause abdominal symptoms and weight loss. Roundworms can infect the GI system and the lymphatic system. They can cause abdominal problems. They can cause respiratory symptoms. And there are other types of worm infections. We're not going to worry about them too much, but they can also infect the skin. But you should focus mostly on these helminths, roundworms, tapeworms, flatworms, stuff like that. Now, we know that the tease loves to mess with you. So here's some common mistakes. I already mentioned this. I'm going to mention it again. You see worm and you think worm, okay? Ringworm is not a worm. It's a fungus infection of skin, and you can bet that the tease is going to try to mess with you here. I would use a much stronger word, but I want to try to sort of be, PG-13 here. You can be darn sure that the tease is going to give you ringworm, and it's going to expect that you think it's a worm. Ringworm is not a worm. Ringworm is a fungus. Flatworm, tapeworm, roundworm, those are animals. Those are helminths. Those are worms. Roundworm is a worm. Ringworm is a fungus. Ah, could I go back to the previous slide for a minute? Sure, I'll go back to the previous slide. There we go. Ringworm is a fungus. Roundworm, flatworm, tapeworm, those are animals. They are helminths. Parasitic. Helminth. Sounds like something from Harry Potter, or some like wizardy thing, like a helminth. Helminth, the parasitic worms. So there, ringworm, not a worm. Here's another common mistake. This is brutal. Okay? Oh no, this isn't the brutal one. This is a good one now. Pneumonia is inflammation of the lungs. And pneumonia anytime you have like a lot of inflammation in the lungs, it's called pneumonia. And pneumonia can be caused by bacteria, viruses, or fungus. Okay? But there's a type of pneumonia, walking pneumonia, that's less severe. It's called walking because people are still usually like, okay, and they're walking around and, that's caused by a bacteria called mycoplasma. Okay, and that's something the tease loves. I don't know why the tease loves talking about this so much, but mycoplasma is a type of bacteria that causes walking pneumonia. Now, I mentioned mycoplasma for this reason, because you know how the tease likes to mess with you. Myco, it's the same thing as worm. Don't get confused. Mycosis is the name for a fungal infection, right? We talked about that. But mycoplasma and mycobacteria are types of bacteria. Oh! So mycosis is not caused by mycoplasma or mycobacteria. It is caused by fungus, including yeast and mold. So you can be darn sure that a possible TEAS question is they're going to be like, which of the following causes mycosis? And then they'll be like, mycoplasma? No. Mycobacteria? No. Fungus? Everyone's going to say, no way. Yes, mycosis is a fungal infection. Mycoplasma and mycobacteria are not fungus, they're bacteria. They do not cause mycosis. I don't know. In the greater scheme of things, this stuff is not important, but the TEAS thinks it's important. The TEAS is going to try to mess with you. Okay. Here's the type of question you'll see on the TEAS. Which of the following diseases are caused by viruses? Select all that apply. I got that one right this time. A, measles. B, anthrax. C, chlamydia. D, leptospirosis. E, dengue fever. You see what I mean? This is the kind of question you're going to see on the TEAS. And it's just like, you either know it or you don't, right? That's why I'm trying to give you these lists of common diseases and what's caused by them, right? I'm not trying to bore you. I'm just trying to give you like what is going to be most useful. So, which are the viruses? Measles, anthrax, chlamydia, leptospirosis, dengue fever. Yeah. Glory be, yeah. Just got that on the ATI app questions, right? It's like people who've been through the ringer, like they know how it is. They're like, yeah. People who've taken the test once or twice, who've looked at the ATI stuff, they're like, yeah, I recognize those questions. I've seen those questions have messed with me. I know where you're coming from. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to replicate those questions, give you examples of them, so that you can be ready. You can be ready when you see this on the TEAS. So we're looking for the viruses here. Which are the viruses? Sometimes you can do questions like this with process of elimination. You can go back after I post this live, and you can study it. You can screenshot those tables, just memorize, and then you can try those flashcards once I have them up. So let's go one by one. Measles. Let's talk about what these are. Measles is a virus. Anthrax is a bacteria. Chlamydia, bacteria. Leptospirosis, caused by a bacteria. Dengue fever, caused by a virus. Just got to know it. Just got to know this stuff. A and E. Okay. Lastly, non-infectious diseases. Non-infectious diseases are things that you don't catch from another person. You don't pick them up from the environment. They're usually caused by genetics, age, lifestyle, things like that. We got Alzheimer's disease, cognitive decline. You forget things, right? Atherosclerosis, hardened arteries, cancer. Cancer's cancer, it sucks. Uncontrolled cell growth. Cataract, that's where you get clouding of the eye lens. Cystic fibrosis is a lung function disorder. You get mucus building up in the lungs. Diabetes, inability to control blood sugar. Down syndrome is a developmental disorder. Hemophilia, your blood doesn't clot correctly. Hypertension or high blood pressure. Muscular dystrophy is a muscular dysfunction. Osteoarthritis is commonly known as arthritis. It's just, we call it arthritis. Swollen, painful joints. And sickle cell anemia, it causes painful blood clots because red blood cells have an incorrect shape. They have a shape of a crescent. They can take on the shape of a crescent moon instead of being nice and round, so they can get stuck in places and they can cause clots. Learn these non-infectious diseases. And then we got to go a step further. What causes them? Okay. We can kind of break these into two groups. There are ones that are primarily genetic, and there are ones that are caused by a combination of lifestyle, age, and genetics, right? So that's like Alzheimer's, atherosclerosis or atherosclerosis, cancer, cataract, diabetes, hypertension, osteoarthritis are usually caused by a combination of lifestyle, age, and genetics. But then there's stuff that's primarily genetic that are caused by mutation, and that's cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, and sickle cell anemia. There's a mutation in the DNA. Similarly, Down syndrome is also genetic. It's caused by chromosomal number abnormality. That means you have the wrong number of chromosomes. You have an extra chromosome in Down syndrome because during meiosis, the chromosomes didn't segregate correctly. It's caused by what's called chromosomal non-disjunction. Okay, so some of the stuff is multifactorial, lifestyle, other stuff is genetic. Now, you might think this has nothing to do with microbiology, and you would be correct, but it has to do with disease. And the TEAS is going to ask you various questions, and they're going to be like, now, which of these are infectious diseases caused by microbes and which are not? And so that's why I'm giving you these questions, because you're going to have to be able to say, like, cataract is not caused by microbes. Hemophilia is not caused by microbes. And sometimes they'll be like, what causes it? So that's why we're doing these two slides. This slide and this slide, know them, and it will help you be ready for the questions you might see on the TEAS. We'll finish up with this question. You'll see what I'm getting at here. Which of the following diseases is not correctly paired with its causative factor? And we have atherosclerosis, lifestyle, hemophilia, genetic, sickle cell anemia, protozoan, or rubella virus. Which of these is not correctly paired up with what causes it? Which of these is not correctly paired up with what causes it? Let's go one by one. Hardened arteries, atherosclerosis, lifestyle. Yes, that is correct. We're looking for the one that's wrong. Hemophilia, genetic. Yes, it is a genetic disorder that is inherited. Sickle cell anemia, protozoan. No, no, no. It's wrong, so that means it's right. How can it be wrong if it feels so right? Or how can it be right if it feels so wrong? It is caused by genetics. It is a genetic mutation that causes people to have sickle cell anemia. And finally, rubella is a virus. Yes, rubella, a German measles is caused by a virus. So C is incorrect. It's not caused by a protozoan. It is a non-infectious, non-transmissible genetic disease. Okay, so that's about that. We have talked today about all of the most important topics in microbiology for the TEAS. And I know we covered a lot, but we covered all of the most important stuff that you need to know. The hardest stuff to learn is probably going to be those diseases. What is bacterial? What is viral? What is protozoal? What is fungal? And that's why I put up those tables. Just screenshot them, put them on your phone, pull up the tables when you're standing in line somewhere, when you're riding the bus. Just practice those tables. As I said, I'm going to make flashcards. I'll put the link to the flashcards up. I want to do that. But just learn that stuff. And when you see questions like that on the TEAS, it'll be just so much more helpful, right? You'll know it. Now, I've written 30 or 40 must know questions on microbiology, and maybe tomorrow or the day after we'll go through a whole bunch of them. I'll do like a problem solving thing with that. So keep your eyes open for that. I'll send out an email to all my everyone that's on my mailing list when I do that. And so we'll do 20, 30, 40, something like that, microbiology questions. And you'll just start getting the hang of this stuff, right? And it's like if you're good with all the micro questions that we do for practice, you'll probably be good for all the microbiology stuff on the TEAS. So maybe that'll be tomorrow, maybe it'll be Wednesday, something like that. I will definitely let you know. And as I always say, if you have any questions, send me email, tyler@teasindoneday.com. I love hearing from you. I love answering your questions whenever I can. Seriously, if you send me email, I will write you back whenever I can. Sometimes people write me back and they're like, oh, I was surprised that you respond. It's like, I always respond. And if you like how I teach, you can check out my website for other resources, teasindoneday.com. I have a full chemistry course that if you like how I teach microbiology, you'll probably like how I teach chemistry. I have a full chemistry course that teaches all the most important topics in chemistry. And I go step by step and just like I teach the microbiology here to break it down and make sure that it's really straightforward and simple and not painful to learn. And I know there's a lot of garbage out there, right? So like my chemistry course, my chemistry course, that is something that you can pay for. But I try to make it really, really inexpensive because I know that a lot of people have already wasted a lot of their money on like crap that does not help them. And so it's like I want to try to make sure that my stuff is really affordable because I know that many people have already wasted lots of money on much more expensive stuff that is not helpful. So you need some help on the chemistry, you can check out my full course, teasintoneday.com, and I think you'll like it. Do I have a course for biology as well? Karen, I don't have one yet. I'm making one right now. And that's why I'm doing all these lives, because like I don't have a course yet. So I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to like give these videos away. That that might like change when I have a course. But for right now, as I make the course, I'm just putting these videos on YouTube because I know they help people. It's really fun for me too. Any questions? I have a couple minutes. Before I have to get going. If you have any questions at all about the TEAS, about the biology, scientific reasoning, A&P, chemistry, whatever, just general life questions, let me know. Thank you so much. It is so great to like see all of these appreciative comments. I'm so appreciative of all of you. This is so fun to be able to like do this. I love to teach this stuff. If it's not clear, I love to teach this stuff. I love trying to help people out. I love trying to like make this stuff clear, and it's really, really fun. Let's see. Any chance you could cover the math section? So yeah, send me an email, Allison. Send me an email. Because like the answer is like yes, I'm working on it. Yeah, if you're interested in the math, send me an email. We'll figure something out. I'll tell you kind of what I'm working on, and maybe you can, yeah, just send me an email if you want to talk math. Yeah, you don't have to, but like if you want to. Would you do A&P as well? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would do A&P. I'm working on it as well. And also scientific reasoning. It's just like taking a while to make some of the stuff because I want it to be good and I don't want it to be bad. So, yeah. All right. Any other questions that I can help with? Any other questions you got? All right. Well, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I'm really happy to hear this was helpful. I'll post this video on YouTube either later today or tomorrow. And you can go back and you can, watch it again, or whatever, let me know, send me email if I can help with anything. Just got like basic questions. Always so happy to help. And I will talk to you guys soon. Send me email. Check out my website. Yeah, I know. Math holds a lot of people back. I'm on it. I'm working on it. All right. Have a great day. Thank you guys. Talk to you soon.